One of the major features we got to experience in Battlefield 1 was the environment, and the environment consists of the map you're playing on, the scenery and the objects within that, and of course the destruction as well. Now, the map that we played on, it was about what I would expect from a World War I era. It was gritty and distinctly changeable dependent on where you were around the map and what you were trying to attack. Playing Conquest, it felt as it should, with specific capture locations, each with their own unique location style. With that said, the map we played on was not groundbreaking in its design. In essence, it was a big open field with some buildings scattered around, some French town buildings. Hopefully we'll get to see some more creative designs going forward. If I had to reference another map to the one I got to play today, it'd probably be something like Harvest Day on Bad Company 2 or Golmud Railway on Battlefield 4. Now, the main thing that we want to talk about in terms of the environment and the look and feel is this changeable weather that we're going to see in Battlefield 1. I got to experience it in the game, and it's new to the game. It means that you may see rain or fog come into your round live in the game. This really changes it up. While I was playing mid-round, fog and mist started to roll in around the battlefield. This was pretty amazing to see and really could fundamentally change up how the game plays. If you can imagine your team are pinned down by an enemy that simply has a stronger position on the battlefield, over time you try to advance, you are cut down. Then the fog and mist rolls in. It enables you to push up, and even if you don't win, perhaps you can make some gains and push that fight back. Perhaps the weather gives your team the help you need to break that enemy front line, push to, back cap them and fragment their previously strong position. And that's pretty much how it felt and played for us when we were actually in the game. The fog and the mist came rolling in, we were taking some really heavy fire, and it enabled us to flank out, get around, and I scored like 4 or 5 kills because of using the mist and the fog as a cloak. So that's really interesting. The rain provides a different dynamic as well, because if you've seen rain in games before, like when I played in Arma, that rain can actually be quite disorientating and distracting, and it wasn't too heavy, but it definitely provided a nice environmental feel there, and I think it just kind of it furthers the immersion for you in the game. Now, I'll talk as well a little bit about the distance between objectives on the ground. Whilst it was a very open map, it felt equal to, again, a map like Golmud Railway in terms of the distance between the objectives, but I think I'd actually rein it in and say it was perhaps a little less between the objectives in that one. Distance between the objectives on the ground felt again equal to something like Golmud Railway in Battlefield 4. This was a very open map, this was a big field map, and on this map on the Battlefield 1, whilst it was very open, it did feel like the distance between objectives was a little less than I would expect in, say, a Battlefield 4 map. And that's actually a good thing, because if you're running around and there's no specific sort of means of transportation always around you. I actually counted it out and I timed the distance between about 4 objectives, and I sort of ran between each one. And on each one, it took me about 15 seconds, give or take, to run between capture points, just to give you an idea if you want to count that out. The terrain, although very open, it allowed enough variety to give you some protection on line of sight. So even though there wasn't any maybe distinct cover, you could often break line of sight by getting down into like a crater, or the field itself is kind of undulating, so you could break line of sight depending on where you were moving up on. And there's a lot of soft cover in terms of trees, bushes, and objects like this around. So even though it's very open, you could still potentially be picked off by snipers and so on, and that is going to be a concern later in the game. Snipers, bipod LMGs, once you've got players who really know what they're doing, that could be a factor. But overall, we were able to move around pretty easily, and it didn't matter greatly whether you had a vehicle or not. Now let's talk destruction. Now, I will say that this map was an open field style, but it still had plenty of buildings. And based on those buildings, I tested how destructible many of them were. I took a tank and I deliberately went around trying to blow stuff up and seeing what kind of reaction I would get there. Now, the level of destruction was significantly less than I was expecting. It felt good when you're involved in a live destruction situation, e.g. being in a first floor and the wall gets blown out and making you either fall out or become very disorientated in there, because you get kind of suppression, etc. Now, simple buildings like a ground floor only barn seemed fairly destructible. They would kind of collapse in on themselves and blow up and generally sort of be destroyed overall. But more significant buildings like a townhouse with an attic, some of the walls were just completely immune to me, putting 5 tank shells into them. The gable end of this one building, which had some sort of signed decoration on the end of it, I was pumping shells into it, just would not go down. So in that respect, it actually felt like the destruction was less than, say, something like Bad Company 2. It just shouldn't be that on an open map you can hide in a building knowing that you're safe from attacks, certainly not when it's just a brick wall. The reason being, these walls will become known and then utilised by infantry to take cover from tanks and then play cat and mouse. I mean, even if it has to retain, you don't want to have like a map which is completely flattened with nowhere to hide, right? Of course. But can't you make it so that those at least fall down or implode and create a load of rubble all over the place? I mean, surely that is preferable to having just the walls stay there and just take round after round. It doesn't make sense. I hope that trees would be able to be cut down as well by machine gun fire and shells as well. I didn't see larger trees affected in this way. I tried driving into the larger trees as well with my landship, again didn't have any effect. Small stone walls seemed to stop my tank dead in its tracks, pun intended. I didn't test it at higher speed, but I'd say a 1 to 2 foot wall was enough to stop my tank, and I had to back up and drive around. The destruction wasn't bad, it just wasn't what I expected from all the talk that we've heard about how much bigger the destruction was going to be in Battlefield 1. Obviously, the more we see, the more we can gauge overall how the environmental factors of the game will dictate how that gameplay is going to run. Anyway, tell me your thoughts, guys, about Battlefield 1 destruction from what I have described here, maybe what you've seen on live streams and other gameplay. Is it what you wanted to see? What do you think about the weather? Do you think it's fine for a normal brick wall to be completely immune to destruction in Battlefield game? Tell me below, guys. I got a load more stuff coming up very soon. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.